the Transatlantic slave trade. Between 10 million and 12 million enslaved Africans were carried through the transatlantic slave trade, a component of the global slave trade from the 16th to the 19th centuries to the Americas. The so-called triangular trade, in which wine, textile, and weapons were transported from Europe to Africa, had three stages. Africans were transported to the Americans as slaves, and the Americans exported sugar and coffee to Europe. Africans were already being transported on Portuguese ships by the 1480s for employment as slave laborers on the sugar plantations in the eastern Atlantic islands of Madeira and Cape Verde. After 1502, African slaves were transported to the Caribbean, but after 1502, African slaves were transported by the Spanish. However, Portuguese traders continued to control the transatlantic slave trade for further 150 years, operating out of their bases in the Congo-Angola region on Africa's west coast. Parts of the 1600s saw the Dutch take the lead in the trade in slaves, and the English and French merchants who controlled the majority of the transatlantic slave trade. In the following century saw the majority of their human cargo from the region of West Africa between the Senegal and Niger rivers. An agreement between Spain and Britain in 1713 gave the British the exclusive right to trade in slaves with the Spanish colonies. According to the Acento de Negros, Britain had the right to send 4,800 enslaved Africans to those colonies every year for 30 years. The South Sea Company, whose shares British Queen Anne owned in the amount of 22.5%, was given the contract for this delivery. Before the year 1600, probably little more than a few 100,000 Africans were brought to the Americas. However, the rise of tobacco and sugar plantations in North America's Pacific region and the Caribbean in the 17th century led to a rapid increase in the demand for enslaved labor. During the 18th century, the highest numbers of slaves were transported to the Americas. When the transatlantic slave trade is believed to have accounted for roughly 3/5 of its overall volume. In Africa, the slave trade had a terrible impact. A culture of lawlessness and violence was encouraged by the financial incentives provided to warlords and tribes to trade in human slaves. Economic and agricultural development in a large portion of Western Africa was virtually impossible due to depopulation and a persistent fear of enslavement. The majority of those taken prisoner were young men and women in their reproductive years who would have otherwise been starting families. who were aged, crippled, or otherwise dependent groups, least able to contribute to the economic health of their societies, were frequently left behind by the European enslavers. The Middle Passage, also known as the Atlantic Passage, was notorious for its brutality and the filthy, overcrowded conditions on slave ships. Just look at this. Where hundreds of Africans were crammed into tiers below decks for a journey that could last for a few weeks to several months. The Middle Passage typically led to Brazil, or the low ceilings normally prevented them from sitting erect, and they were frequently chained together. Insufferable heat and low oxygen levels made it impossible for candles to burn. The Africans were only permitted to spend a small amount of time each day outside on the upper decks, due to crew's fear of mutiny. Between 15 and 25% of the enslaved Africans traveling to the Americas are thought to have perished on slave ships, according to historians. Between the beginning of the 16th century and the end of the 19th century, the time of the voyage was greatly cut down. This resulted in a decrease in death rates, which were directly proportional to the length of the voyage. The West African Orlado Equinox Autobiography, which was published in 1789, is particularly well remembered for its vivid account of the hardship experienced throughout the long trips across the Atlantic Ocean. Please subscribe, hit the bell and click all, then like our videos and share.